This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Hey there, loyal listeners. Would you like to help other independent musicians find this podcast? Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast service. It really helps. Would you like to support the podcast? Join the Unstarving Musician community. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com and join right there on the homepage. If you're an independent musician, you'll be glad you joined because I share tips and lessons you can use in your music journey. And this isn't just coming from me and my years of experience as a gigging musician. It also comes from the hundreds of other musicians and songwriters I've talked to as part of the Unstarving Musician Project, including those I've interviewed for this podcast. And it's all free, just for being part of the community. Another way to support the podcast is to pick up a copy of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, how to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. You can get your very own paperback or Kindle version on Amazon, and you can find it just about anywhere fine ebooks are sold. Have you heard of Bandzoogle? They've come up on this podcast several times. Many of my guests use it to power their artist websites. From garage bands to Grammy winners, Bandzoogle powers websites for tons of musicians around the world. Their simple step-by-step system will get you online in minutes. Lots of mobile-friendly templates you can use to customize your design and content. It's built by musicians for musicians. Check out all the features Bandzoogle has. A merch and download store to sell music and merch commission-free right on your website. A tour calendar to promote your shows and sell tickets commission-free. Mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send professional-looking emails and newsletters. Integrations to pull in content from all of your socials, including Twitter, Instagram, and SoundCloud. And, very important here, live support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Go to bandzoogle.com to start your 30-day free trial. Use the promo code RABONZO to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code RABONZO to build your artist website today. My guest, Jason Davis, has spent his entire career in music. He started out as a songwriter, wrote a hit, won an award, worked with a major label, and then discovered that he loved helping other artists realize their dreams. He's worked with several noteworthy acts, including Boyz II Men, The Go-Go's, Alabama, the list goes on and on. Jason is now a co-founding partner for a label management and publishing conglomerate. We had a very interesting conversation. Music release strategy, getting the music part right, some of the best income opportunity he sees artists leveraging today, a little about the Patreon-like fundraising model, streaming, the importance of asking for support, getting out of one's comfort zone. I think there's a lot of good information in this conversation. Here is me and Jason Davis. You have worked with a number of iconic artists. You're co-founder and or partner of label management and publishing companies, but you started out as a music artist yourself and a songwriter. Can you tell me a story about your transition from artist to artist development and representation?
Great question. So the first year and a half I was in the business, my main focus was a songwriter. That's how I broke into the business. And that was, up to that point, my ultimate passion in life. And I realized early on, the first few record label meetings I had with Sony and Atlantic Records and RCA Records, that they were always looking for artists too. And that planted a seed for me of just another avenue of something I could pitch to labels or work on. And started putting out the word that I was looking for artists. And I met an artist that I thought was good, brought her into Sony Music. This is about probably a little over 20 years ago, maybe 21 years ago at this point. And Sony was interested right away. And I just, it was so exciting to be able to do what was being done for me. Like my brains were exploding. My heart was exploding. I was so unbelievably blown away that my dreams were coming true. Really dreams that I couldn't even dream were coming true. It seemed so big that through working with artists versus just being an artist or being a songwriter, I got to see a dream blossoming before my eyes. I got to see me being used to, impact somebody's life or change somebody's life. And that quickly became more exciting to me personally than, kind of just creating songs, and which is something I was unbelievably passionate of a lot of my life, but I became more passionate about the idea of, figuring out ways to help people.
That's a great story. I can relate to a small degree, and just because of what I've been doing with the podcast and hearing back from, talking to musicians here, occasionally hearing from them from, they may not have ever been on the podcast, and chatting at length with a few of them, and just a tiny little piece of what you've experienced, I totally get, and I was surprised by it. And it sounds like you were a little bit surprised and delighted at the same time when that started happening.
Yes. Yeah. That was a very exciting, time for me.
So I would love to understand, and maybe it'll give some perspective to listeners. There are two companies in particular that, for whatever reason, they jump out, in your bio and your online presence, and one is a higher level agency and the other one is First Company Management. Can you talk about the differences between the two and who they're serving?
Yeah, so higher level, the seed of that company was started by Jasmine Roll, who is a partner of mine, and we work together. And probably in the neighborhood of 7 or 8 years ago, he started booking artists, fell in love with booking artists, and got really good at it. And somebody that I know in the business introduced us and thought that I could potentially help him grow his company. And there were some things that I brought to the table that he didn't have, and vice versa. So we partnered up, and basically it's a booking company. And was started, under that premise. So we're booking, speakers, music artists, athletes, everybody we're booking, has had a level of success or major success in their life. And so a lot of what we do is working with speakers, but we also do work with recording artists as well. Booking events and things like that, or speaking engagements or concerts. And First Company Management is a management company in Christian music. We're one of the top management companies in Christian music, and it's been around for, 25 plus years. And we work with some of the, biggest and best artists in Christian music. So
cool. How the higher level agency, how do you guys go about connecting for example, speakers with your clients, the places where you're booking them? Do companies come to you guys, or have you just built, it's kind of a morbid curiosity is probably not the right word, but I'm just kind of curious how it works. How do clients come to you guys?
It happens a few different ways. The talent that we work with, or represent, has come from a variety of sources. I mean, it's just, 20 plus years of working with celebrities or known people, and networking through those relationships. And then Jasmine has a bunch of his relationships, and just so many different people I know how to get to people. As far as how we get the engagements, one of the things we look for are artists or speakers that are already getting interest in doing concerts or speaking engagements. So, one of the acts that we work with is actually a magician, and pretty well known one. And, we're getting probably 2 to 3 inquiries a week on booking him. So I don't want to say that that's easy, but, we have a team in place that knows what they're doing. And so that's one way. Another way is just through buyer relationships. So we have tons of relationships with past buyers that have brought in concerts of ours or speakers of ours or, entertainers that we work with. And so, we have hundreds of relationships with different buyers around the country. So those are generally, the different ways it happens.
Sure. Yeah. Part of it's just old fashioned relationships, which is not a big surprise. Yeah. And the other part's just nice to have because the clientele you work with.
Totally.
Do you work with, on the music side, do you work with your clients on music release strategies at all? It's something.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about that? Knowing that, I speak with a number of DIY indie artists here, and some of them have some sort of representation, some of them not at all. But yeah, can you share something that would be useful for them?
Well, when it comes to music release strategy, I know that is something that's really important to artists. It's something that excites artists, how to put it out, when to put it out. But I'll say that from my decades of doing this, what is 10 times more important from my view is getting the music right. And I think once it's right, you can release it in so many different ways. And if it's right, it's going to get some level of attention. So for me, obviously, having the right name as an artist, having the right branding, having the right visuals, making sure those visuals are married to the songs and really work with the songs, putting it up on, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, promoting it on social media, going to different blogs, things like that, are obviously great. And there is a level of promotion, pretty intense promotion that we do on our end when we work with an artist where, we're pitching them in all kinds of different areas, like whether it's relationships we have with music supervisors who are working on TV shows or movies or commercials, or record labels we work with, or even things like in-store retail, like getting songs playing in hotels or airplanes or retail stores, overhead, or shopping malls, so, and there's so many, and the list is very long of things that we go after when we're working with an artist that I think are all important stones that have to be turned over in the forest. Even radio, there's been times where, we had the right song and, a massive radio station started playing it, and that's what triggered a record deal. So, there's a lot of different areas that you could work, but I think, the part that I think people miss the value of, skip over to some degree and just do not pay enough attention to, do not torture enough, is really how good are the songs, how good is the vocal, and how good is the production. It's a product-based business. We're not buying a person, we're buying a song, and it's a recorded song and it's finished. And in that process of writing and recording, there are so many layers and so much wisdom that could be had, and so many blind spots that people have, that, you know, the vast majority of the time a product comes out and it's not competitive. And the artist may think it is. A lot of artists are a little too precious about their songs or what they're creating on their own. So, you know, to me, the process of promoting and exposing and releasing songs is obviously very important. But I think 10 times more important is to make sure that you're going out into the world with the right product. And, you know, that's very challenging if you haven't been focusing on making a particular product for, you know, 15, 20, 30 years. Without that experience, it's very hard to make a product that's competitive.
Sure. Yeah. Difficult to say the least.
Yeah.
Would shifting gears a bit, our playlists and streaming, they seem very important for artists today at any level, and assuming that's true, can you talk a little bit about the importance thereof, or significance if it's not, you know, as important as I might perceive it to be?
I think streaming is at this point, it's one part of a story. To me, you know, if you're an unsigned artist, if you're not signed to a record company and you're trying to grow and get attention, then I think the playlists are important from the aspect of you're trying to build a story around the product. You know, I tell people all the time, but, you know, record labels are basically like watching the TV show Shark Tank. You know, you have to have a great product, and you have to have a story. You know, you see people walk on Shark Tank and they have a great product and they have sales figures and kind of like these small victories that have happened for the product, that they can kind of build a story around the product, proving connection, proving that somebody out there is connecting with what they've created. So, you know, when you're a up and coming artist, you've got to have songs, and you've got to have some way to prove that the music is connecting with somebody. Whether that's, you know, the hottest writers and producers in that genre are excited about this artist and want to dig in with this artist. That's something that will, you know, capture a record label's attention if they're hearing something about an artist from a big songwriter or a big producer. But I think, you know, it's really important that, again, at the end of the day, it comes down to how great the songs are, you know, based on, you know, what will or won't happen with it.
Sure. All the way from quality of vocal, as you said, to the performances on there and the production quality. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you,
but you know, I will say, you know, just on the streaming thing, I think it's just one part of a story. So, you know, when I'm talking to a record label about an artist, if the music has already been released, and it's out in the world on iTunes, Spotify, and Apple Music, and it's on YouTube, and it's out there kind of in the competitive field, to me, you know, there's so many aspects of what makes a story interesting. And streaming, to me, just shows that the music is out there, it's getting exposed. Record labels love exposure, you know. So, you know, if I was talking to a vice president of a record label, I would be saying stuff like, hey, you know, they worked with these songwriters, these producers, the producers and songwriters had this reaction to them. They have, you know, gotten on some pretty impressive Spotify playlists. their song is being looked at right now for a Toyota commercial, and they're getting paid, this many thousands of dollars for their song to be in a Toyota commercial. Their song, has been playing, 80,000 times a week in retail stores around the country. It's just different points of building a case that there's some proof of concept that the songs that were created and the music that was created is connecting, and it's winning some small victories without the investor, without the record label. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just sitting here thinking, about, the whole story, like one that you described that has all these different pieces. Does that typically come to fruition for an artist because they are working with some sort of representation, helping them, and assuming that they put together high quality music, they got the music right, as you say? Does that generally come about with the help of some sort of representation?
Yeah, I've never seen an artist, and I don't know of any story of an artist really succeeding without a pretty amazing team. It always takes a team. So I've just, what, I would say this, in over 2 decades, meeting probably thousands of artists that were aspiring, with, many of them having their own songs recorded. And I would say that I think I've met 2 artists, 2 people in over 20 years that actually got the music right on their own. That's how hard it is.
Sure.
Without a team.
Yeah. I can see that. What do you see as the best income generating opportunities for music artists today? And I'm kind of thinking that can happen at different points in their trajectory of their career. But yeah, are there any opportunities that jump out at you as really good ones?
Yeah, I think touring. I think playing shows. There's one indie artist that I helped get a publishing deal for that. A lot of what he does is play colleges, and he makes, a solid enough living playing colleges that's what all he does. And he's just gotten into the college scene and college network, and he worked really hard to do it. But, any entrepreneur is going to have to work really hard to break, a real money-making career. I don't care what you do for a living. It's going to take effort to make that living. But so he's playing colleges. I know another artist that makes about $1 million a year, and all he does is play house concerts, and he plays corporate events, and he makes a lot of money playing corporate events. I know a few artists in Nashville, totally independent artists that probably make $500,000 to $1 million a year, and all they're doing is landing songs and in licensing, TV and film, landing their songs in commercials and TV shows and movies for usages. And I'm just trying to think what else. I think those are the 2. Another thing too is I've also met some artists that are great at just raising money to pay for their projects. So I've met a bunch of artists that go to different companies or go to local companies and say, "Hey, I'm an artist. Would you sponsor me? I'll put you on my website, or I've got this many followers on Instagram, and I'll give you shout outs." And they have different sponsorship levels of, like, a company could give them $500 or $5,000, and you'd be amazed when you start asking people for help in life. There's a lot of people that will say no, but there's also a lot of people that will say yes. So I've seen artists raise considerable amounts of money, not promising it back to people, just really just asking for help. So those are some different ways that I've seen it.
Yeah, you're reminding me, excuse me, of one of the first conversations I had on the podcast about sponsorships, and it was from a young artist in Nashville named Melissa Trahan, and there was a video that she'd done prior to our conversation, and I happened to notice that she liked coffee from watching or checking her out online, and it just so happened there was a local company there. The owners just really loved her and wanted to help her, and they sponsored, helped her fund that video, and maybe you've done some other stuff with her for the simple reason that you had alluded to here, is that people would be surprised that when they go out and start asking other people for help. What do you think about the Patreon type of model, and maybe even Patreon specifically? But what about that?
I think it's amazing. Our management company, we work with a speaker who has a blog, online website, and she posts really unique information that people view as something that they want in their life. And they're she has a lot of people constantly going to her site and returning to her site because she's constantly posting content, and people find it to be very beneficial content, as a blogger. And so she has a monthly subscription for you to get additional content through her site. And, she's totally independent, and she's a speaker, and she's making, pretty unbelievable money, and just launched her own podcast, and it's one of the hottest podcasts right now in America. So, I've seen that work, probably more for like maybe a speaker versus a music artist. But I have seen it work for music artists as well.
Sure. Are you allowed to say who that person is? I'd love to check out their podcast and their written work.
I'm not sure if I could tell you off air.
Okay.
I'm not sure if she would, want me. I'm sure she would, but I've never asked her if I could mention her. So
yeah. And if
I try to be super respectful, but I'll tell you when we get off air for sure.
No problem. I knew I wanted to ask that question, and I'm really glad I did. And I wanted to mention, I didn't know what your response would be, but I loved it. I wanted to mention that I was recently kind of amazed at hearing a story about Amanda Palmer I knew her from the Dresden Dolls, but she's kind of a multifaceted artist. And she was featured on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and she,
and she raised over $1 million, through fans.
Yeah. And she's got a huge community that currently she's on Patreon. She talked about Kickstarter and talked about the fact that these platforms will change, and she's quite aware of that. But it kind of sounds like her career, her ability to create art is being funded by, a bunch of super fans that are on there. And it was
yeah. I mean, I think she raised money from over 1,000 fans online. I mean, obviously you have to really have a following. And, some of these artists built their following over 10 years online. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have 1,000 people that will give you money, in a year or two of putting up posts on Instagram. But
yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. I won't mention the artist just because, again, I try to be very respectful of people and their privacy. But there's an artist I'm currently working with, an independent artist. And she, I was really trying to encourage her to, and she has the ability to fund things herself, but still I was trying to encourage her to go to different local companies and different local owners of businesses and ask for some help and sponsorships. And we kind of created a platform for her to be able to offer different things back to these companies. And she said to me, that she was known in the area. Everybody knew that she had the financial means to do things herself. And there's not one person in her area that would ever give her any support financially. And she was very adamant and very strong about that there was nobody that would support that because they know that she doesn't need it. And I said, well, you never fully know anything unless you try it. And we kind of had a long conversation, and she basically, got to a point where she was like, okay, I will try it. Like, I will try it because you're telling me to try it. First person she goes to, she offers these packages between like $500 and $5,000 of what she could do for the company or, the business, and, asking for their help as an artist. And, the business owner says, well, okay, I know you have these $500 packages or $5,000. What is it that you're actually trying to raise? And she's like, well, I haven't really thought about that, but
what a great question.
30 grand, like 30 grand, 50 grand would be a dream, And he says, well, I'll just get, I need to talk to my wife, but we love helping people and we love supporting people. Like, I'll probably just give you the 50 grand myself. And like, she was so blown away.
Yeah.
And then, I have like a really small startup, Christian label, really small. And she basically calls me up and says, hey, I told this business owner in my area all about you, and he wants to know if he could come to Nashville to sit down with you, because he's really interested in your label. And so next thing you know, he's sitting in my office with this artist, and he's basically saying to me, like, I'm not saying that this will happen, but I'm just showing you the power of asking. He's sitting in my office saying to me, what would it look like if I invested $3 million behind your label? And, having serious conversation about that, and me trying to really educate him on what that truly looks like, not solely from a positive end, like the shadows or the downfalls or what could happen, or, just trying to paint a very clear picture for him. But it was the first person she asked, and she was convinced that nobody would ever give her even $1. And so, I learned a long time ago that you really never know until you ask people, so.
Yeah, it's a great reminder, and possibly one of the most valuable things we've discussed here in this conversation as far as what, people listening to this. Yeah.
And I'll say what that's all about. And what I work with, people that work for me in my companies or artists that I work with, a lot of this is trying to get people out of their comfort zone, because when we're out of our comfort zone, that's really where we grow the most in life. And, for her, I think it wasn't just the doubts of like, is anybody going to ever really support me or this? But it was also having to get out of her comfort zone to actually ask somebody for help.
Sure.
And so, I think that I've seen this over and over again. Every time I've been able to get an artist out of their comfort zone, there's always results.
That's great. Really good stuff. So you've been called a super manager, passionate mentor, and your bio, a couple things jumped out at me. It says you've pioneered new approaches to the signing and development of some of the world's most successful recording artists and songwriters. What does that mean, pioneered new approaches?
Well, I think it's just, first of all, between me and partners I have, we have relationships all over the world, whether it's relationships with how to maneuver at radio or how to get press or awareness about a project. Our reach is, thanks to God, our reach is really far. I mean, at different points in my career, I had offices in London. I had offices in South Korea. So, in Canada at one point. And so there's just, it's a few decades of nonstop networking and pushing boundaries and relationship building. And so I think through how wide and vast the relationships are, and also too, most people have worked in like one genre of music, or maybe have dabbled in two. I mean, I've worked in every genre of music you can think of. So, I mean, I've worked in the Spanish market with major record labels, and I've helped Spanish artists get signed. I have family members of mine that are, hugely successful in Latin music. And the funny thing is I don't speak a word of Spanish. And then, I've worked with rappers in the past. I worked with R&B artists. I've worked with country artists, legendary country artists, major pop acts and major pop producers. So whether it's LA or Nashville or New York, I mean, I've also lived in all the different music cities, Miami, New York, LA, Nashville. Like, I've spent considerable years of my life in all those areas, and still have relationships in all those places and worldwide. So, there's a lot of, when you have a large network, you can think creatively. And then also too, it's just the way we position artists. Because I was a songwriter, like, I am a manager. I'm also an entrepreneur, but my roots are songwriting, and I've written hit songs by myself and won ASCAP awards for songs I wrote by myself many years ago. So, I have a songwriting background. I understand songs. I understand great songs. I understand how to get to great songs. I understand how to prepare singers, so God just downloaded tons of wisdom over the years, where we can actually develop things from the ground up. Artists that are green, like, we could take really the most green artist and lead them on a path where, over the course of a year or two, or maybe a bit longer, they could be viewed as highly competitive in the industry. And there's just, there's not a lot of people that, or companies that can do it on that level. So.
Yeah. I know a couple of your company websites, but what is your favorite or most recommended way for people to find you or find out about what you're doing in the world of music?
I mean, I'm not, I'm kind of low key, and but I would say that, Radar Label Group or 117, are, the companies that I've had and, formed, both are in the, 20-year area, that I've been involved with them. So, I would say that those are the favorite too.
Cool. You're based in Nashville currently, yes?
Yeah, I have offices in Nashville, but I also have offices in Florida. In the West Palm Beach, Delray Beach area.
Cool. It was really good talking with you, man. I appreciate you spending time with me today, and I'm glad we got the tech worked out.
Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'll be talking to you soon, and we'll put some of this good stuff in the show notes. Oh, by the way, I did get a kick out of your, I have this moment in life that drew me to music, and it was someone I saw on TV, and I got a kick out of you. At least the moment I read for you was seeing Kiss on TV, and I did see them a little later than the one that really got me started, which was the Rolling Stones when I saw them on TV. But I do remember also seeing Kiss as a young person on TV going, wow.
Yeah. The TV exploding with fire.
Yes. The devil's music was kind of rekindled with those images for sure.
Crazy.
Jason, thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for listening. Question for you. Are you struggling to move your music journey forward? I can help, if not personally, then by referring you to the next best available resources. Schedule a free 15-minute call with me to find out if I can indeed help you. It's easy. Just visit unstarvingmusician.com/coaching to schedule your call today. Look for links to just about everything covered in this episode in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. This episode was powered by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, how to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and ebooks just about everywhere you can find them. It's also available as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. I'd love it if you picked up a copy and would love it even more if you left a review. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.